One thing you got to do before anything else is you got to give Kyle Nelson respect. The man is only like 30 years old, and over the course of just watching his career, he's kind of been written off. Until recently, right? Until you take a look at the last, three. Blake Builder, all right, we're not going to count that. That's a win, though. Fernando Padilla, massive victory. Bill Algeo, massive victory right there. So he's coming in hot, looking to go 4 wins in a row. But then you got Steve Garcia, who says, I already got 4 on my record right here, man. Sting Choi, Melky Costa, Nerden Becky, and Chase Hooper, right? So this is really about who's surging, who's going to take the next step. And when I'm looking at career trajectory, I really think Steve Garcia is a massive, massive play here who's coming into his own. But let's not forget, man, let's look at the styles of these fighters. 2 dudes who are willing to bite down on their mouthpiece, step into the middle of the cage, and just see who exits the pocket first. If that plays out 10 times, AJ, how many times does Garcia get it done versus how many times Nelson gets it done?
You know, Derek, I'm gonna go a little closer to even on this one. I'm thinking 6 out of the 10 times, maybe 7. Steve Garcia gets it done. Might be a little biased because I'm from New Mexico, but still, man, I think he has the power and the willingness to step in there. But not only that, the timing and the chaos, man. You need a little bit of chaos when you're in there and both people are just swinging for the fences. Steve Garcia seems to have the luck on his side when he's in that exchange.
I was going to go 7-3. 6-4 is super fair, though. And I don't want to be too high on Steve Garcia and be biased from this perspective, but I like Kyle Nelson more on the take advantage of the over commitment of a Steve Garcia. And I like Steve Garcia for just pure swinging and banging. He's going to get you out of there. You better tuck your chin, right? But this is an MMA fight, AJ. This isn't boxing, so it's a little more complicated than that. Open, -150 for Steve Garcia, +110 comeback for Kyle Nelson, the Canadian. If you take a look at the numbers right now, hasn't changed much, but it has shifted for Garcia, -185 for Garcia, +155 for Kyle Nelson. So wrestling, let's just jump straight into it, man. I can see Kyle Nelson doing a little bit of evasion, trying to stay away from the big flurries of Garcia, but I can also see him try to take advantage of a clinch, get him to the ground, and neutralize all of that power, ride it out for a victory right there. Where do you see Garcia in the takedown defense standpoint here, in the grappling defense standpoint? Where do you see him? How do you see him holding up?
Honestly, Derek, that's one of the biggest concerns I have for Garcia going into this fight. With the amount of power he throws and the disregard that he's able to put in those kind of fights, man, he's very heavy on his front foot, so he's very susceptible to takedowns, very susceptible to leg kicks. We even saw it in that Stumbo Choi fight that he just had. You can get tagged up a little bit if you're Steve Garcia, overextending on those shots, and that's what's going to leave just a couple holes for Kyle Nelson. And especially if they're going toe-to-toe, I can see the clinch working for Kyle Nelson right here, getting to the back, controlling, and that's one of the big ways that Nelson has a path to victory in this fight.
Yeah, this might make my take look bad right here, like revisionist history, but I definitely think that Kyle Nelson can get an upset win here because of Steve Garcia's willingness to take a shot to give a shot. And I don't know if you want to take one against Kyle Nelson. A full steam overhand from Kyle Nelson it's not good for anybody, right? So I want to rely on Kyle Nelson's grappling to see how this can be a close, interesting fight. But when I take a look at the -140 TKO prop for Steve Garcia, it confuses me because I'm looking at 2 different numbers. -140 TKO prop for Steve Garcia, okay. But when we look at the over on this fight, 1.5 rounds, right? And I look at the over, it's +145 for the over 1.5 rounds. And if I'm not mistaken, right here, AJ, we got a prop lock that people need to definitely tune into right there. And that prop lock is over 1.5 rounds on this matchup specifically, because I believe Kyle Nelson will not dangerously or not recklessly endanger himself with the flurries of Garcia, to where if a knockout happens, late 2nd round, early 3rd round, if not a decision. So that's my 4D chess right there. I've been thinking about this play a ton right here. I need some critiques. Give me some feedback right here. What are you thinking?
I mean, it makes sense, Derek. The only flaw I can see is that moment of this is our time. This is the guy, especially if you're Kyle Nelson, you're fighting a guy who has all the push, all the surge, all the limelight on him. What's better than going out there and stiffing the dude that everybody thinks is gonna get back at you? Like that right there, it has a lot of time, and especially with the reckless abandon that Steve Garcia places in his fights, that it causes some concern because anybody can get caught. I mean, we just haven't seen it happen yet. And admittedly, Steve Garcia has fought a lot of those people, but they haven't found themselves in the position to catch him yet. Kyle Nelson, man, we've seen him grow up in the UFC. He's a veteran in the game now. He can find himself in those positions.
And where we're banking off of this one, just so I could close the loop on my prop lock, folks, this is not a prop speculation. This is a lock, right? if you take a look at the last real KO that Kyle Nelson has, that was back in 2019 versus Marco Polo Reyes, right? The last one against, Algeo, yeah, he got him, right? But the man never went down. The man was still on his feet, right? So I felt a little jaded by that one. But either way, man, I think this is going to be a fun stand-up affair as long as it lasts. I do have a feeling, man, I think Kyle Nelson is going to try to shoot. And I think that that's going to kind of mix things up a little bit right here. So what's the big play? Garcia is the consensus pick, but what's the value play here?
Value play, Derek, is the prop lock all day, brother. Over
There we
one and
go.
a half. You were talking about it. That's the value right there. If you're not going for that, folks, I mean, I don't really see much else. That minus 140 TKO, it's a little, as much as many TKOs as he's getting, it still seems to be a little far-fetched. So I like that over 1.5 all day long.
And I wouldn't even say far-fetched. It's just a matter of if it happens, like how are you cashing in on that one? You might make a little scratch right there, but that's why we just take the over instead. Any love to the decision prop, which is equal on both parts, which is interesting, plus 650 a pop.
I personally know, Derek.
Okay.
I always try not to say no. I try not to be negative on this, but I don't see this one going to a decision unless it's a snoozer. And if it is, Kyle Nelson all day long, because he's going to look to clinch, he's going to look to grapple, and that's where the decision could come into play. I hate saying a snoozer is going to be on the card, especially with Steve Garcia fighting, but if that is happening, that's probably the decision that's going to go down.
No, you're absolutely correct right here, man. Last time Steve Garcia went outside of the second round was against Luis Pena back in 2020, bro, and he lost the fight, right? So this dude likes to finish his work. Now leave it up to the judges. Steve Garcia, that's the play. Take the prop lock over 1.5 rounds right there.